Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson today. We're listening to The Unbelievable Betrayal Husband's Secret Sin.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Is Ryan Widmer guilty? Ryan Widmer, a young athlete, is convicted of a horrific crime. He is serving a life sentence with parole eligibility only in 2025. More than 10 years after this tragic event, he is fighting to have his conviction overturned. Ryan's case attracts public attention and excites the population of 3 neighboring states, causing controversy about his guilt. The unusual manner of Sarah Widmer's death and the fact that a clear motive for the crime has never been revealed is what makes this case so controversial. Sarah and Ryan met at a local cafe they both liked to visit. Ryan ordered a cup of coffee, and Sarah, who was standing in line, noticed a book on his table that she had recently read. Their shared interest in literature was the start of a conversation. They spent several hours discussing books, movies, music, and their shared interests. They learned that they both loved nature, traveling, and animals. With each meeting, their relationship grew closer and more trusting. They learned more and more about each other, and gradually their friendship grew into true love. After a few months of their relationship, Ryan proposed to Sarah during a romantic dinner at the very same cafe. Sarah was happy, and naturally, she said yes. The young lovers set a wedding date. They looked out for a beautiful 2-story house in Hamilton. On April 10th, 2008, their wedding took place. The wedding ceremony was held in a small and cozy church, surrounded by their closest friends and family. Everything down to the smallest detail was brought to life by Sarah. Sarah was simply gorgeous in her white dress. Ryan couldn't take his eyes off her. After the festive banquet, under the applause and joyful shouts of the guests, they went on their honeymoon to the Hawaiian Islands, where they spent 2 weeks enjoying each other and the paradise nature. The young people were in love. They made plans for the future and dreamed of children. A fateful coincidence changed their plans. On Monday, August 11th, 2008, after finishing her shift at the dental clinic, Sarah met Ryan at her favorite cafe. They had dinner and had a lively discussion. Afterward, they walked home. Sarah sorted out the groceries she had bought and sat down on the couch. Ryan brought her a glass of water and a pill, for his wife had complained of a headache at dinner. He ran her a bath. Together, they finished watching their favorite TV show and exchanging air kisses. Sarah went upstairs to the bedroom. She undressed, folded her clothes neatly, prepared a towel. She lit the scented candles and turned on her favorite music. Ryan pushed buttons on the TV remote, stopped a couple of times at the soccer game, lied on the couch for no more than 10 minutes, called out to his wife. Over the quiet tune, Sarah didn't hear him. Slowly making his way up to the second floor in the bedroom, Ryan turned on the TV, called out to Sarah again. Silence. In a slight panic, the man made his way to the bathroom. Sarah was lying face down in the tub. Ryan pulled the plug of the tub and rushed to the phone. At 10:49 p.m., emergency services recorded the call. A man yelled into the phone that his wife had drowned in the bathtub. She had probably fallen asleep. In his panic, he didn't listen to the dispatcher's commands and wasted precious time to rescue Sarah. Throughout the call, Ryan, under the careful guidance of the dispatcher, did get Sarah out of the tub and repeatedly performed CPR on her. An ambulance, along with police officers, showed up at the Widmer home 6 minutes after the call. An initial inspection of the scene of the tragedy attracted police officers. The bathroom was dry and clean. There were no signs of water or scattered supplies that would suggest an emergency removal of a body from the water. The bathroom was neatly cleaned. Sarah was lying on the bedroom floor with no clothes on, her skin dry. Only the young woman's wet hair communicated drowning. The bedroom was tidy as well, leading law enforcement to think of a murder. Ryan was thrashing around the bedroom. He was wearing only his underwear. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation was initiated by a medical professional when he found no pulse. A pinkish-white discharge was coming out of Sarah's nose and mouth, indicating drowning. 2 attempts were made to intubate Sarah as she lay on the bedroom floor, but both attempts were unsuccessful. Afterward, Sarah was rushed to an ambulance and 2 more attempts were made to get her heart back into rhythm with a defibrillator, but again, without success. All the while, Ryan remained by his wife's side. Subsequently, medical staff described his condition as extremely upset and anxious. Within 20 minutes of arriving at the hospital, Sarah was attempted to be brought back to life, but at 11:41 p.m., an emergency physician pronounced her dead. Ryan fell to his knees in the hospital hallway and cried. Relatives and friends of the couple could not have imagined that only 4 months after the wedding, a tragedy would occur that would shock the whole city, and Ryan would become the only suspect in the murder of his young and beloved wife. Ryan's first statement, which he gave in the hospital, made the investigation doubt their veracity. He claimed it was just the 2 of them at home with his wife, nothing out of the ordinary. They had dinner at a cafe. They came home. They watched a TV program. Sarah had a headache and he gave her some painkillers, took her to the bathroom. When he found her, Sarah was lying face up. However, the emergency call record reported that the victim was lying face down. The man was dumbfounded by what had happened. He kept repeating the same thing over and over like he was mesmerized, calling out for Sarah. Under pressure from the investigator, Ryan was forced from victim to participant in the investigation to find out what happened to Sarah that night. He consented to a search of the house. Analysis of the medication Sarah took confirmed it was a common analgesic, but the headaches, the migraines, were a frequent occurrence. So often that she took a course of drugs that changed the hormonal background and plunged her into uncontrollable sleep. This became the first version of Sarah's death. After searches of the house, traces of blood were found on the carpet. It was also recorded during the investigation that at the time the police and emergency services arrived, the bathtub was dry and there were no wet towels. The tile was also dry and clean, leading police to believe that Sarah had been murdered. No wet items, clothing, or other paraphernalia were found in the house with which to soak up the water. Ryan's statements during the 911 call and at the hospital became completely contradictory, which aggravated the case and turned Ryan from a victim into a suspect. The examination of Sarah's body showed that she had bruises on the right side of her forehead and a spot hemorrhage on the inner surface of her eyelid, a bruise on the left side of her neck, a contusion on the back of her neck, an abrasion on her left armpit, and bruises and lacerations on her upper lip. However, this theory did not become strong enough, for Sarah's fingernails were not broken or chipped. There were no marks on her hands, elbows, or knees to prove a struggle. No injuries or marks were found on Ryan's body either. An investigative experiment conducted by Sheriff Bishop did not clearly answer whether there was a struggle between the couple that evening. After all, the bathroom supplies were in place, and there were no other signs of resistance. It was left to speculation. Either Sarah did not take a bath at all, or she did not resist and allowed her husband to drown herself. Sarah's autopsy, which was conducted by Dr. Russell Apt Grove, confirmed that death was caused by drowning. Along with this, multiple muscle hemorrhages in the front of the neck and multiple contusions to the scalp were noted. These injuries were determined to have occurred prior to the woman's death. But how and where were they sustained? The investigation went around in circles with no answers. Toxicology tests showed no illicit or alcoholic substances in Sarah's blood. On August 13, 2008, Ryan was arrested on suspicion of aggravated murder of his wife. The charge was based on an emergency call, a scene that did not match reality and injuries on Sarah's body. This was enough to charge him with drowning his wife. Ryan and Sarah were very much in love with each other. As confirmed by friends and neighbors, they never argued or fought in public. They made plans for their lives. What was the secret that caused their tragic deaths? In March 2009, the first court hearing began. Emergency dispatcher Ron Cronenberger, who took the call, is presented as a witness. He described the conversation with Ryan as nonchalantly calm. He also made several statements about Ryan's actions during the call, stating that it sounded like he was just blowing into the tube, pretending to perform CPR. The prosecution argued that the 911 call, the scene, and Sarah's injuries were enough to prove that Ryan killed her. He forcibly held her underwater by drowning her in a bathtub. The main piece of evidence in the case was the bathtub. Police checked the bathtub for fingerprints and found streaks supposedly left by human hands. The marks were located closer to the middle of the tub. Using a reflected ultraviolet imaging process, fingerprints and smears were found on the tub. A forearm print was found on the tub, and a hair follicle test determined that the print was left by an adult male, but the age of the print could not be determined. The bathtub did not become a major piece of evidence in proving the struggle between Ryan and Sarah. The prosecution went further and told the jury that there was likely a violent altercation that night at the Widmer home for unknown reasons that the suspect had willfully kept silent about. They called an expert to testify that it was impossible to fall asleep and drown in a bathtub unless illegal drugs or alcohol were involved. According to their testimony, the sensation of water on the face could have awakened the person or caused the gag reflex to enter the airway. If not, the drop in oxygen levels would have caused the person to wake up. Also, the pathologist who performed the autopsy was called to testify. He testified that if Sarah had a dry body and wet hair, one likely explanation would be that her head was pushed off the edge of the bathtub, toilet, or sink. She could have been pushed either forward or backward, either in running water or in a full bathtub. According to the prosecution's case, Ryan held Sarah's head underwater until she drowned, and on that basis, he should be found guilty of the crime. The defense, on the other hand, has argued Ryan's innocence, primarily because of the lack of motive. The defense continued to fight. It argued that if there had been a violent altercation, as the prosecution argued, there would have been evidence of it. However, there were no injuries on Ryan, and Sarah's fingernails were not broken or chipped. They argued that the injuries found on Sarah were the result of prolonged CPR, direct cardiac massage, and repeated attempts at intubation that night in the house and in the ambulance, on the way to the hospital, and at the hospital itself. At the insistence of the defense, a second autopsy was performed on Sarah. Dr. Werner Spitz performed a second autopsy and again confirmed that the cause of death was drowning. He observed injuries to her neck, arms, upper lip, skull, a lacerated liver, and bleeding on her neck, but could not determine if these injuries were sustained during cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Those present argued that EMTs attempted to resuscitate Sarah for approximately 45 minutes, and that the areas of bleeding deep inside Sarah's neck likely came from an IV that had been inserted into the area because the EMTs were unable to access the veins in her arms. Instead of ruling it a homicide, Dr. Werner Spitz ruled that Sarah's death was undetermined. The defense built its evidence base on the fact that her skin was dry because it dries faster than her hair, by conducting their own experiments with drying out her skin. They also said that when Ryan first found his wife unconscious, he instinctively pulled the drain plug, trying to figure out how to help her, and called emergency services. This sequence of events explains why her body was drier than expected. The water had drained in the bathtub even before Ryan called 911. An experiment conducted by an expert witness showed that a person emerging from the water can dry out in 7 minutes. A second court hearing was scheduled in May 2010. Ryan's father, Gary, said the prosecution had the victim's DNA results indicating the presence of the disease even before the second hearing. But the prosecutor refused to release the result because he did not believe it would have changed the jury's verdict. However, it remains unknown whether the jury's verdict would have changed if they had received credible evidence of Sarah's medical condition that could have triggered the drowning. The official reason for denying a retrial was the jury's error in their investigation. Ryan remained incarcerated. After another unsuccessful court hearing, the Widmer family was in for an unpleasant surprise. One Jennifer Crew came to the prosecutor's office to testify about Ryan's guilt. She stated that she was a friend of Ryan's, and he was in regular contact with her by phone or email. From Jennifer Crew's testimony, he called on October 26, 2009 at 11:09 p.m. The voice was very upset. He told me that he had beaten Sarah in the living room the day she died. Sarah found out about his philandering life. She saw photos of an inappropriate nature. They yelled and argued for a long time, first downstairs, then in the bedroom. Ryan pushed her in the bathroom and left his wife there without checking what happened to her. He was angry. After calming down, he found Sarah breathlessly floating in the full bathtub. In an attempt to cover his tracks, he wiped up the water on the bathroom floor with towels and came up with a plan about the accident. Ryan's defense fought hard for his acquittal. The lawyers managed to discredit Jennifer's testimony as implausible. After all, there were no wet towels found anywhere in the house, including the dryer. There was no evidence of infidelity in their marriage. The family had no financial problems and never quarreled. Ryan was characterized by friends as a good-natured and helpful person who was never seen even remotely angry. Ryan would not have benefited from his wife's death, as there was no life insurance policy. Before the third trial began, Jennifer Crew was able to be discredited and kept out as a witness. Evidence of her past philandering and convictions for petty theft helped. The call in which Ryan allegedly gave her a confession, too, was not corroborated. In January 2011, there was a third trial on newly discovered evidence. The defense presented an opinion on Sarah's medical condition that could have provoked the sudden loss of consciousness and resulting drowning. Several medical experts testified that existing conditions of cardiac or neurological defect could possibly have provoked the loss of consciousness, but medical experts called by the state denied these claims. Sarah's co-workers were called to the court hearing and revealed that she regularly slept in her car before starting her work shift at the dental clinic. She was often plagued by allergies and sharp stomach pains. Dr. Benjamin Mesmer, a dentist at the clinic where Sarah worked, said that on the day Sarah died, she complained of both a headache and stomach pain. Later that evening, a friend was talking to Sarah, and Sarah mentioned that she had a headache and pain in the back of her neck, and her friend said she looked very tired. Sarah's ability to fall asleep easily in unexpected places became a well-known joke among those who knew her. One friend even suggested that she suffered from narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder in which people feel very sleepy throughout the day. Sufferers of narcolepsy find it difficult to stay awake for long periods of time. They must have several brief sleep phases throughout the day to live a full life. Sarah's mother's testimony ruled out the narcolepsy theory. Speaking at trial, as a prosecution witness, Sarah's mother, Ruth Ann Stewart, denied having sleep problems. Sarah was a robust child, regularly monitoring her health. She had a regular daily routine. I never observed her to be excessively sleepy. Medical staff regularly underwent full medical examinations. Sarah worked as a dental hygienist. The last examination carried out during the woman's lifetime showed that she was perfectly healthy. The aforementioned witnesses and testimony about Sarah's regular sleepy state were also inconclusive. An expert in biomedical engineering, human factors engineering, and biomechanics of injury testified for the defense and opined that Sarah's injuries were not consistent with a forced drowning. Had Ryan attempted to drown her face to face, injuries to the small bones of the neck and defensive wounds to the arms and legs would have been expected. If he attempted to strangle her from behind, injuries to the victim's knees, hips, and pelvis would have been seen, but none of these injuries were discovered during Sarah's autopsy. The defense argued that they had no explanation for what caused Sarah's death that night, but emergency medicine expert Dr. Dave Smile testified that there are about 300,000 episodes of sudden death each year nationwide, and 1–2% of them occur in people under the age of 35. In 33% of them, autopsy findings were normal, with no evidence of cardiovascular, neurologic, respiratory, or central nervous system involvement. He also agreed with the previous statement that, given the extent of the resuscitative measures performed on Sarah, he was genuinely surprised that more injuries were not found on her body. The jury was asked to consider all the facts of the case and realized that Ryan had no reason to harm Sarah. There are certain situations where people die and their autopsy may never reveal the cause. The defense urged the jury to look at all the facts surrounding the case. Ryan had no reason to harm Sarah. Once again, the defense was defeated. After about 12 hours of deliberation, Ryan was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The jury based its decision on the lack of water on Sarah's body and in the area around the bathtub, Ryan's history, and the belief that his 911 call was orchestrated. The third trial juror felt that Ryan's demeanor in court was one of the main reasons he believed he was guilty. When the autopsy photographs were shown, they felt that Ryan showed absolutely no reaction. Ryan did not take a stand, although he addressed the court after the verdict was announced. "I love my wife. I didn't hurt her. I wasn't given a chance. The day after her death, I'm charged with murder. If I had an answer, I would tell you what happened to her, but I can't. I wasn't in the bathroom with her. I love my wife, and I didn't hurt her." Ryan's family has defended him very zealously. They've invested their life savings in lawyers. They picket the courthouse every time he's in court. A tragedy that happened more than 10 years ago still brings like-minded people together. The last hope to exonerate Ryan Whitmer is DNA testing. Genetic material plays an important role in contested and evidentiary charges or exonerations in unspecified deaths. But what makes this case unique is the requested DNA of the victim, not the convicted person. Ryan's attorneys are seeking a court order to disclose the DNA so it can be tested for genetic disorders such as prolonged QT syndrome, LQTS, is a potentially life-threatening canalopathy accompanied by prolongation of the QT interval on a 12-lead ECG, syncopal conditions, and a high risk of sudden cardiac death, which is a disorder of heart signaling that can cause sudden fainting and seizures. According to the Mayo Clinic, young people with LQTS have an increased risk of sudden death. Some people are born with the altered DNA that causes LTQS, and this can occur later in life. Unfortunately, a Warren County judge has already denied Ryan Whitmer's request to have Sarah's DNA tested. Listening to all three trials, I never saw a motive. But again, the prosecutor doesn't need to prove it. It's just very unusual in a murder case to not have any motive, commented former Hamilton prosecutor Mike Allen. Ryan Whitmer is currently awaiting a motion for his release in federal court. Ryan has been in prison for 14 years, and unless a federal judge rules in his favor, his first chance for release will be in July 2025. With each passing year, I hope that next year will be the year that I will be free because I loved Sarah and I didn't hurt her. Innocence of a crime alone is not grounds for exoneration, said University of Cincinnati law professor Donald Custer, who is also an attorney with the Ohio Innocence Project. You have to prove that there was a constitutional error in the judicial process. Whitmer will have his first chance at parole in 2025, but attorneys say it's unlikely he'll get parole because the parole board is most favorable to inmates who are remorseful. But Ryan Whitmer continues to insist he's innocent. Thanks for watching, guys.